not a foreign policy expert by any means, but I've been trained by Action Corps, and this organization is all about empowering everyday people to take action. Although I'm not Iranian American, I did grow up in this country as a Muslim and have seen for the entirety of my life the way that Islamophobia can be used to condone violence and harm minority communities. And with history unraveling before us right now, I'm so grateful to have been able to get this group of people together to engage and how people power can make a difference. Now I'd like to pass it on to my co-MC Kanisha.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kanisha, and I'm an Action Corps fellow as well. I'm also an organizer with Action Corps Maryland, but I'm in Idaho for the summer right now. And then while I'm also not Iranian American, I am Black, and that's a very strong part of my identity. It's very important to me. And I study domination, I study oppression. And so it's extremely important for me to stand in solidarity with people all throughout the world, with people everywhere. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm here tonight and that I'm super passionate about the work that I do with Action Corps. And so I'm also going to go ahead and paste in a link for an action alert that we're going to go more in depth on later. But in case you guys want to get a head start, I'll put that in now. And I'll pass it along to Action Corps Director Isaac.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us here this evening. This is a really important moment. It's been amazing seeing the energy across the country. I'm really grateful to NIAC, the National Iranian American Council, as well as, and Myriam from NIAC is here tonight to talk with us. Really appreciative of Peace Action, of Quincy Institute, for co-sponsoring tonight's event here. So the rallies have been happening across the country from coast to coast. And there were, in fact, a rally in Boston today. There is a vote tomorrow, really important vote in the US Senate that's been scheduled for 6 p.m. tomorrow, Friday evening. So we have just 23 hours left to mobilize to get as good of a vote as we can get on that. And we know that there are several senators that have already pledged their support. There have even been Republican senators who have said positive things about the vote, about the Iran War Powers Resolution. This is tonight we're going to have a chance to learn more about the U.S. bombing of Iran and U.S. support for Israel's bombing of Iran. We're also going to have a chance to send these letters that what we just Kanisha just posted in the chat. Chance to send those letters to our federal lawmakers, urging them to support the Iran War Powers resolutions. And at the end of this call, we're going to have a chance to take a screenshot of all of us to send to our Senate, that we'll send to our Senate offices, um, encouraging them to vote for this legislation. And also to send after they vote as well with some sort of accountability message. Um, we encourage folks tomorrow to make a call to Congress, the number 1833 Stop War. So 1833 Stop War will connect you directly to your senator when you enter your zip code. And you can then they'll encourage folks to call tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time or anytime after that. Um, Action Corps got to play an important role with the effort to stop the US-Saudi war on Yemen. And we did that with a War Powers resolution. That was an incredible mobilizing tool. And we saw the power of that because it's a process-oriented thing. Even folks who believe that the US should bombing Iran, members of Congress can sometimes get on board with these War Powers resolutions because they see it as something that it's an issue of separation of powers and of congressional power. Article 1 of the US Constitution, which defines the role of Congress, gives war-making powers to Congress and Congress alone. And so this is really like many of you may have participated in No Kings demonstrations a couple weeks ago. The war powers issues is a matter of really what distinguishes a monarchy from a democracy. It's a key reason. It's Article 1 for a reason because of the importance of war-making powers and that belonging to Congress. So we can get Republicans on board. We can get Democrats across the political spectrum in part because of this being a constitutional issue. We want to ensure that there not one more bomb is dropped by the U.S. on Iran, that Israel does not drop any more bombs with U.S. military support. There has been no debate and vote in Congress, and the American people have been really clear that we do not want war. Um, so we have an opportunity to make a really big difference at this time. It's a pivotal moment. It's really a make or break moment. So I'm so glad to get to be with all of you this evening. And I'll pass it back to Sarah.
Hey, hi everyone. So really quickly, we're going to do a quick breakout room session that Isaac is going to set up for us. Thank you so much, Isaac. It's going to go by really, really fast. We just want to give people a quick chance to talk and get fired up for the event and maybe meet someone new who's part of our coalition. So please keep it short so you can hear from everyone, and note that you will be back. You'll be automatically brought back to the main room at the end of the breakout room.
Yep, you'll have 3 minutes. So, and we're asking people to introduce themselves and say what brought them here. Awesome. All right. Hi, Tina Ann. Welcome. We're just doing a breakout groups, and we are going to pause the.
Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that gave everybody a chance to say hi to someone and just connect with a fellow organizer and activist near you, potentially near you, we should say, or across the nation. Right now, what I'd like to do is go ahead and introduce Myriam. Please join me in welcoming Myriam Sabbaghi. She's the National Organizing Director at the National Iranian American Council. Miriam has led grassroots campaigns across the country, building powerful coalitions and mobilizing communities around civil rights, diplomacy, and peace. She's a seasoned organizer and a creative force, and we're so, so honored to have us here, to have her with us here tonight. Welcome, Miriam.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Action Corps, for having me. Really great working with you all. Really great seeing the community here. Yeah, so just a rundown about what's going on and what the situation in Iran right now and what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. I'll be as brief as possible and things we can do here back home. So a couple weeks ago on June 13th, Israel did an illegal and unprovoked strike against Iran. They first targeted Tehran, the capital, where about 9 million people reside. They have bombed hospitals, civilian buildings, military sites, oil refineries, gas fields. They attacked even all over the country beyond the capital, including Esfahan, Kermanshah. Israel bombed a hospital in Kermanshah. And this is kind of the same playbook that we've seen in Gaza, right? Israel bombing hospitals, Israel bombing civilian sites while they claim to target military or government figures. People are also part of are being targeted as well. Just most recently, right before the ceasefire that happened this past Tuesday, the Evin prison was bombed, the entrance of it. And that's where a lot of political prisoners, famous political prisoners, were bombed. And Israel said that in the name of liberation, they wanted to bomb this prison. Now, it doesn't make sense to me. How do you want to liberate prisoners when you bomb them? It just doesn't make sense. So also millions of people had to evacuate Tehran after Trump tweeted that the citizens of Tehran must evacuate, all in caps. And that unleashed panic. It unleashed, including my own family. They had it. Generations of my family live in Tehran. And my cousins, my 90-year-old grandma, my aunt, my uncle, they had to all evacuate the city that they live in. And these are just ordinary people, doctors, engineers, lawyers, school children. Everyone had to evacuate. And gas ran out of the country because there was high demand for it and traffic was clogged. And when that Trump's evacuation order came out, people were panicking, obviously. And it was it's been a very traumatic experience, including for myself. My own cousin, she's a doctor in Tehran, and for the last couple of weeks, she has been treating ER patients coming into her room to the ER, civilians who have been injured, dead, you name it. And whenever I would see news of Israel bombing a hospital in central Tehran, my heart would jump because I thought, I hope my cousin is not dead. So this cuts deep and very personal to me. Much like, though, I want to say in pure solidarity with Palestinian people here, Palestinian Americans who've had to go through similar scares and similar nightmare for the last couple of years. We've seen the same playbook that Israel has been doing in Gaza, trying to apply it to Tehran. And they also bombed the state television. And that is a very regime-changing move, right? To bomb the TV station or radio stations of a country. So this is beyond just bombing Iran's nuclear facilities, right? Was their stated goal, military goal, quote unquote. Their goal was to collapse the country, just collapse the government, collapse and cause internal chaos, break people's spirits by bombing hospitals and civilian infrastructure, buildings, residential buildings, including 3 blocks away from where my aunt lives. She could hear explosions right outside her house when it was all happening. So going into the current situation where we now, so over Israel had been bombing Iran, and then Iran did launch retaliatory strikes on Israel, especially in cities like Tel Aviv, Haifa, Beersheba, and caused severe damage. Just today, Israeli officials did say that Iran's ballistic missiles caused severe damage to IDF bases. I know the Haifa oil refinery was basically gone because of Iran's ballistic missile. Civilian scores, 27 Israeli civilians have been killed by Iran's missiles. And I would say now, in terms of the civilian deaths in Iran, it is climbing to the thousands because people are still buried under the rubble. But officially, the Iranian Ministry of Health have declared 610 people killed. That number will go up. In terms of where we go from here, well, President Trump did strike Iran without congressional authorization, as Isaac mentioned on Saturday, and bombed Natanz, Fordo, and Esfahan. And these are near major population centers. Fordo is close to the city of Qom. Natanz is close to also Esfahan, and Isfahan is a major city home to millions of people. And it is still unclear. The early U.S. intelligence assessment said that Iran did not suffer much damage to their nuclear sites. Now, there has been a lot of political whack-a-mole back and forth in Washington, whether or not these strikes have caused severe damage or not. Democrats, including Chris Murphy and Chris Van Hollen, who just released a statement today, said that there was no reason to conclude that there was any threat coming from Iran directly to U.S. interests, and it doesn't seem that its nuclear sites have been severely damaged. Now, folks like Lindsey Graham and Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, said no, and even Trump himself said no, Iran's nuclear program has been obliterated. I think the key question, and then Lindsey Graham, of course, said it has not been obliterated enough. He wants more. Even though we have a ceasefire right now that Trump apparently brokered between Iran and Israel through Qatar, it doesn't seem that the fight is over and that the war is over. Even though officially the 12-day war has been concluding, I just received reports that over Tehran drone explosions have been reported. Now, it is unclear where are these coming from, but given the fact that Israel has violated 162 times ceasefires, it might be safe to conclude that Israel has maybe launched more strikes on Iran. It's still unclear. We cannot verify, but the situation remains very fragile. The ceasefire remains very fragile. In terms of now what people are feeling on the ground in Iran right now, people are slowly returning back to the city, but I just spoke with my cousin today saying that people are still very scared. People are still very distrustful of Israel. And actually, this has created a rally of, contrary to what Israel wanted to do, engineering a regime change collapse. A lot of people, including people who have been very critical of the government, people who I know are activists in the women life freedom movement in Iran have explicitly come out publicly saying that they oppose Israel, full stop. And I would have not seen this 2 years ago, a year ago. And people still are out of Tehran because they fear for their lives, but slowly people are returning back to the city. And my cousin was just telling me today, they're catching up on social media and they've seen the protests that we in the US have been organizing across the United States, in San Francisco, in Boston, in Chicago, in Seattle, in DC, New York. And they've been very heartened to see that we've been mobilizing thousands of people across the country, opposing this war, opposing Donald Trump's strikes against Iran that was done without congressional authorization. I would say where we go from here, we do have to, like Isaac said, we have to push and pressure our senators, our House members of Congress to support these Iran war powers. I know that the Senate vote is up for tomorrow, tomorrow at 6 p.m., I believe. So there is still time to call your members of Congress, urging them to support. I know there are some toss-up senators that need to be a little bit of a push, especially Susan Collins of Maine. Murkowski comes to mind for folks joining from Alaska. Utah, I believe Lee is a toss-up as well. But even Gillibrand, I think, is still iffy, and the New York delegation. But I can say that our New York chapter did a vigil right outside Schumer's office last week and met with his office right before, and Jeffrey's office. And right after we met with them, alongside coalition partners, Schumer, alongside several members of Congress, issued a statement saying that they would support an Iran war powers resolution. And Schumer himself is whipping support votes for this, which is a good sign, given Schumer just a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, issued a Taco Trump video kind of lambasting his efforts for a diplomatically negotiated deal. Where we go from here now, Iran, the foreign minister, actually, I just watched his interview on state TV. He did say that while Trump has claimed that there are talks with Iran scheduled for next week, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi categorically denied any negotiations with the US will be happening, denied any talks leading up to talks will be happening. And just today, the Iranian parliament voted to kick out all IAEA inspectors and to perhaps consider pulling out of the NPT. I don't want to take up too much time here, but these US strikes, these illegal US strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities and Israel's illegal and unprovoked strikes. By the way, I want to say two nuclear armed countries has struck a non-nuclear armed country, Iran. So two nuclear powers have struck a non-nuclear country. So that it says a lot about the state of nuclear non-proliferation, the nuclear non-NPT regime that we have in place right now. And yes, NPT, nuclear non-proliferation treaty, yes. And Iran is more compelled to not to pursue talks with the United States and the European Union. And I would say, given what I've seen in terms of public opinion in Iran right now, I would say a lot of people who previously were critical of the Islamic Republic and were more gearing towards for a deal with the United States I'm seeing people without headscarves saying that Iran should go its own path. So this has caused a rally around the FRECT, and this is very fearsome. This is very scary for what's going to happen to the nuclear non-proliferation race in the Middle East if Iran goes down this path, if Iran will ultimately pull out of the NPT. This is going to trigger a nuclear race in the Middle East. UAE is going to be compelled to do it. Saudi Arabia is going to be compelled to do it. And this is not going to make our world safer. I'm happy to stop here and answer any questions, but I just wanted to give a roundup of what we've seen on the situation in Iran and Israel, but also where do we go from here and what Iran might be pursuing.
Yes, thank you so much, Myriam. We're probably going to hold questions till the end after Adam Weinstein has a chance to speak. That way you guys can both answer anything that people have to say. But thank you for speaking and also talking about how if this really is about nuclear weapons, all of the strikes on Iran and the conflict as a whole is really counterproductive. So, and I also really appreciated hearing your own personal stories about it. I think it's super powerful. And thank you so much for being willing to share that with us. So next, we're going to be hearing from Adam Weinstein. Adam serves as the Director of Middle East Programs at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. So he oops, sorry, where he studies security and the rule of law in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iraq. So he also has a background with NIAC, the organization that Myriam is with, and he previously worked as the senior law and policy analyst there. He has his law degree in international justice and transitional justice, and he's extremely knowledgeable in policy in the Middle East. So we look forward to hearing his perspective tonight, and please join me in welcoming Adam Weinstein.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry, I'm trying to bring up a document really quick. Uh, and I seem to have lost it. If you could just give me 1 second. I just had it open. Okay, here I do. Anyway, NIAC's a great organization. I spent a couple of years there. I don't know if I would call, give myself as much praise as you did introducing me. I think there's very few experts on Middle East policy, but I'll speak generally to the group today. And I think what I'm going to say, most of you already understand. But the bottom line is that history shows that it's easier to get into a war than to exit one. And what this is all about is trying to change that reality, although it's going to be difficult. Um, as was discussed, I think by the last speaker, the strikes weren't successful. They were tactically successful, but they weren't successful in terms of their aim of completely destroying the nuclear program, and that's because the nature of the strikes themselves and their ability to reach all of the nuclear assets and the fact that they were telegraphed for days. Yes, Israel conducted strikes and eliminated senior IRGC commanders and killed nuclear scientists. But the reality is that the Trump administration hesitated. Now, why that is, I think it's because the Trump administration didn't necessarily want to go this route. And so there wasn't real coordination with the Israelis from the beginning, but that's just speculation. But I think that explains the delay. But of course, the cost of that delay is that Iran could have moved some of its assets from Fordow, for example. And truthfully, even if there had been coordination, the program is such that, and the way the enriched uranium is stored is such that airstrikes alone might not destroy all of it and might only set it back by a few months. And that's why the JCPOA was so important that Trump exited, and that's why negotiating a new agreement was important. And we have to remember there's been this narrative by President Trump that Iran had 60 days to negotiate in good faith, and they didn't. 60 days is a drop in the bucket when it comes to negotiating a complex agreement. The Trump administration gave the Taliban 18 months to negotiate a much simpler agreement, which was the withdrawal of U.S. troops. Previous negotiations of the JCPOA took much longer, and we have to also remember that uh, Iran has essentially waited 4 years since Trump abrogated the JCPOA. So this idea that you, Trump was generous in giving 60 days and the Iranians didn't respond to that is preposterous. And the fact that they're sidelining their own DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, I think speaks volumes about the relative success of the strikes. As the last speaker said, Lindsey Graham wants more strikes because I think there's a recognition that the strikes were not completely successful. But that's the inevitable conclusion of this cycle, which is that it will never be enough and there will always be more needed. And we have to remember, it's not just us on this call who don't want to see this war with Iran. The broader American public, even though they might not be engaged in the day-to-day on this issue, don't want to see war with Iran. 60% of Americans across party lines oppose military intervention, and only 16% support it. And that's from a YouGov Economist poll. And 57% oppose the Trump administration's threats to bomb Iranian nuclear facilities, and this increased to 69% if the potential for starting a war is made explicit in the questioning. And that was from Hart Research poll. I'm sure some of you have seen these polls. I recognize that polls can, they're pseudoscientific in some ways, but when you see figures this high, I think it does represent a real trend. Diplomacy is still possible, but the pathway is extremely narrow right now. And that's why it's important, I think, to restore some faith in the American system, that Congress reassert its war powers authority. And beyond the uh, inherent importance of Congress reasserting its war powers authority, whether it's a just war or not, it's also not in the interest of the United States to join a war with Iran. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but Israel's strikes even without Trump's actions, put U.S. service members and diplomatic staff in the region at risk. And that's because any Israeli action is viewed within the Iranian system as being in cahoots with the United States, whether it is or not. So, I'll save some time for questioning because I think that's a more interesting use of our time. But I think these are the broad points that we should be hitting when we try to talk to whether it's members or the general public about why war powers is so important.
Thank you so much, Adam. And thank you so much for sharing some of those polls and like figures to really just hit home how unpopular escalation really is in the US, because sometimes you can't really tell just how unpopular things are from media alone. Like Adam said, we're going to be please take a moment to post any questions you might have for Adam and Myriam that we can position to them. Just to get us started really quickly, I wanted to post to both of you. If you can speak a little bit to what the parallels you're currently seeing to the beginnings of the war in Iraq that are happening and unfolding now, both in terms of media and political framing, as well as public sentiment.
I'll take a first stab. The parallels that I see are frankly some of the same people who are writing in support of the Iraq War a little over 20 years ago are writing the same exact articles now, and they don't have any they haven't reflected at all. I mean, most people in Washington these days will say that the Iraq War was a mistake. There's some people who still contend that it wasn't a mistake, but most people will say it was a mistake. But they've compartmentalized it as a unique set of circumstances. They haven't internalized the real lesson of the Iraq War and applied it to future conflicts. And that's where we see the disconnect. And unfortunately, some of these voices are platformed in places like The Atlantic and the New York Times, and they're able to influence Republicans and centrist Dems because of those publications, or at least traditional Republicans. I think MAGA itself is a little bit divided between the America First movement and the Republicans that are linked to MAGA but might not be truly America First in the MAGA sense of the word. Um, so that's one parallel, this media campaign to normalize this idea of war. And then the second parallel I see is just the hubris, the idea that it can be limited, the idea that there's no slippery slope to it. I mean, I suppose I'll give the Trump administration a little bit of credit for trying to get a ceasefire and not continuing the strikes. But I don't trust that inclination of theirs. And the thing with President Trump, in my view, is that his inclination and instinct is towards diplomacy, but it's a very shallow instinct in that he can really be moved the other way quite easily. And he's unfortunately surrounded by people who still have a very strong neoconservative instinct for regime change. And so I think there's a real risk of him returning to that kind of posture towards Iran. And folks like us who have these calls on a Thursday night at 7 p.m., I think sometimes we're maligned as being hysterical or being a broken record or being the boy who cried wolf. But the reality is we see this slippery slope. These things that we've predicted that they say couldn't happen, whether it's a Muslim ban, whether it's strikes on Iran. I mean, if you had told people, if you had told the public intellectuals of Washington 2 weeks ago that there were going to be strikes on Iran and that Trump was going to authorize strikes on Fordo, they would have called us hysterical and told us that we didn't know what we were talking about. But yet there's this inevitable march towards interventionism that we've seen happen over and over again for the last 20 years. So those are the parallels I see.
Miriam, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, plus one to all of that, what Adam just said. I would want to add though, like, I remember though the public sentiment in 2003 leading up to the Iraq War was much different than what we see today, right? So if you go back to 2003, everyone was very pro-war, general public, 9/11 was still fresh, and there was overwhelming public support. Like the poll after poll showed that there was a lot of support. While we did see a lot of protests back then, the general public was very supportive of the US invading Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, going back, fast forward to today, with those same people trying to justify and engineer more wars for the United States, I think people, the fact that the intelligence back in 2003 was doctored, it was fake, it was all strung together to justify nothing, basically. I think it has been seared into the public conscious. Like 20 years of mistakes, I think the general American public has realized no more wars. So I would say, like, I just dropped this in the chat as well, but even leading up to, like, even during Israel strikes on Iran, and even after Trump's strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, overwhelmingly Americans oppose it. They may not, the leaders in Washington, the pundits do not reflect what the base is thinking, as we see in poll after poll after poll. So 69% of Americans, including 64% of Republicans, according to the poll that I just linked to, they oppose a new war in the Middle East. And as Adam mentioned, there's a lot of infighting right now back and forth in the MAGA movement, precisely because Trump campaigned on not having more wars. He campaigned on being a peacemaker. And so this is really rattling right now the MAGA movement. We saw tensions between Marjorie Taylor Greene and folks like, I don't know, other pro-war voices out there who wanted this to happen, right? And also, I think the polls, I mean, Trump cares about polls. He cares about numbers and how he's seen and getting the Nobel Peace Prize, right? And so I'm sure when he saw the numbers that he had no public mandate to continue strikes on Iran, like he could have continued. He had a lot of people around him who wanted to push for more strikes against Iran. He had people like Lindsey Graham around him. He had people like even Marco Rubio, who is somewhat maybe more tame in public, but has always been a war hawk. Like he could have continued with it, but I'm sure he saw the mass public opposition against this, much unlike not like what 2003, and I think that kind of caused him to seek a rapid exit. I also want to bring up a point that even Iranian Americans, a solid majority of Iranian Americans support diplomacy. They think diplomacy is the best way to pursue the issue versus military action. NIAC just did a poll with YouGov, a scientific professional poll with YouGov that shows this. So I wanted to add that the public sentiment is much different than 2003, and the numbers show that as well.
Thank you so much, Myriam. We have a question here from Isaac. He said, I've been talking with conservative libertarian veterans who strongly oppose US military aggression in Iran. Do you see opportunities for a right-left alliance to stop unconstitutional war? And I'll direct this at Adam first.
Well, I do think that alliance already exists. I mean, Quincy Institute is part of it. There was a New York Times article a few years ago about that very alliance, and I think I was quoted in it. Maybe I'll find it and add it to the chat. I mean, it was in the context of Afghanistan, but still, that alliance does exist. But I think we also have to be realistic that the restrainers, and if you're not familiar with that term, I'm sure most of you are, but it's this idea of having a more diplomacy first, less interventionist foreign policy. The restrainers within the Trump administration have somewhat been sidelined, or they've been fired. And so I don't know how strong that voice is. And the veterans are not a monolith. I mean, I'm a veteran myself. I served in Afghanistan. I was a Marine, but uh, there's very outspoken conservative libertarian veterans that are anti-war or at least support congressional oversight at a minimum. And there's plenty of progressive vets that think that way. But then there's also this large group of vets that are either slightly conservative because it is a conservative institution overall, or they're apolitical, and they can be easily convinced by this sort of gung-ho rhetoric that we see coming out of the White House. So I don't want to exaggerate that alliance. That alliance is important because as advocates that the fight isn't fair, but you have to go to the fight with the tools you have. And I think that's an important tool in our toolbox, but I think we also have to recognize the way this administration works is that I do agree with Miriam about the fact that they care about polling and they care about public opinion, but in terms of the actual decision making, they're doing it very close to their chest, in the West Wing.
Miriam, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, plus one to what Adam just said. I mean, Nyack did lead a letter just a few weeks ago, and we had quite a few libertarian right-leaning groups sign that letter, encouraging the Trump administration to pursue diplomatic negotiations with Iran and opposing military strikes, like full stop. And it was quite notable to see some right-leaning libertarian groups sign that letter. It was very, very pleasing. It was very good to see. But I want to note that they have different approaches and different language and lingo to with their own audiences and their own on how they want to advocate on this issue. And I do want to note that even in the last couple weeks when Israel started this war with Iran and after and then also Ro Khanna, he was going on podcasts. Like I think the most notable example is Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan. Like those folks, those are like Trump's MAGA bait. Like that's it. They handed him the election. And Theo Vaughn, Ro Khanna asked Theo Vaughn this question. He's like, "Do you know anyone in your circles who support war with Iran?" And Theo Vaughn was like, "No, I have friends who are Navy SEALs, former Navy SEALs. I have friends who are former veterans, and they all don't want this." And then also you've had people like Steve Bannon, surprisingly. I can't believe we have to agree with Steve Bannon on this, but he was also going really against this US strikes and involvement against the war. So we've seen like even the biggest example is Tucker Carlson. Like the day, I think literally the day after Israel struck Iran, he knew what was going to happen. He knew that the US was going to involve, and he categorically came out against it. So I'm just also seeing this interesting like I don't know with I'm seeing differences within like the administration, but also within the talking heads like Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson. I don't know, Kurt Mills is one good example. They all are against US military involvement and period war with Iran. But then and then the MAGA base, which opposes this, but then you have like people in the administration who are acting differently or making these different decisions. And there is that conflict going on. And in terms of alignment with those talking heads, again, they have their own methodology. I'm not categorically saying no, we should not collaborate with them because we do disagree with on a whole other range of issues. But I don't think they want to, I don't know how much they would want to talk to us or collaborate with us. I think we have to be more creative, maybe having more conversations, put podcasts, public conversations to maybe see where we agree on more points of agreement and then go from there. But I don't know how much even now people like Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon even have the ear of Trump anymore, because I do remember that Trump did a tweet saying that he just was very dismissive of Tucker Carlson about his stance on war with Iran. So
Yeah.
there is this mismatch. And Adam, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to add just one thing. I mean, he did. He said he made the quip that Tucker doesn't have when Tucker has a TV station, he can he can talk. That just goes to show you. I mean, we do have to remember. Although I know some folks are concerned that Trump doesn't view this as his last term, but at least constitutionally, it's his last term. And so he might feel that he can take risks and he doesn't necessarily have to listen to Tucker the same way he might have been his first term. I actually think that, you know, there can be progressive groups and these conservative groups can operate in parallel. They don't always have to work together. Sometimes it's not even good if they work together. Sometimes it is good if they work together. It really depends how it's done. I think in Congress it's good when they work together. I also do want to offer the Quincy Institute as a bridge. We are transpartisan. My leanings are progressive, but I have conservative colleagues, and I certainly have dealt with a lot of conservative veterans groups and other groups, and we can act as a bridge because we're transpartisan, because we talk to everyone and we have everyone and within Quincy Institute, and so we have a certain credibility there where we can act as a liaison almost. So if you guys have ideas of how to work with these other groups, let us know because we can really be a help to that, especially Tori, who's our head of advocacy. She's not on this call, but she's very talented, and also we have a staff member named Rowan who works on advocacy. So just reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. You can always reach out to me if you have ideas. The problem, and I'll reiterate this, is that most people don't want to see a war with Iran, but it's not their top line issue. It's not their top line issue like immigration or like certain types of personal rights or domestic issues, culture war issues. And I think that presidents, not just Trump, but I think all presidents know this, and that's why they feel emboldened to do whatever they want to do on foreign policy because they know that most people aren't going to take to the streets to oppose a war with Iran. They'll take to the streets for other issues. So I think that's what we're up against. Even though the vast majority of people oppose war with Iran and don't want to see us get entangled in another Middle East war, it's not their top line issue. So I think you guys can also, it's harder for Quincy Institute to do this because we don't do domestic stuff, but you can draw parallels between going to war with Iran and all these other issues. I mean, I'm sure most people on this car are critical of ICE. I mean, DHS didn't even exist before the war on terror. It's a product of the war on terror, and we can sometimes draw these parallels and point out that these things come back home to roost.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you, Myriam. Is there anything, Myriam, we could add about Susan and Megan's question in the chat about how we can support Iranians who've been recently picked up by ICE since the bombings?
Yeah, it's a crazy development that has happened over the last week. I mean, I would say 600, so 130 Iranian nationals have been arrested with 670 total in ICE custody. These arrests that have happened this week obviously have happened following the US military strikes on Iran. And while a ceasefire was announced, I would say the consequences for our Iranian American community and Iranian community have only escalated here at home. These ICE arrests happen in LA, which is home to the largest Iranian American Iranian community in the United States. Alongside, also it's the largest Latino community in the United States is LA. So this is just the latest dehumanizing example of how geopolitical tensions hurt us here at home. And I would say overall, reports show that ICE arrests have nearly doubled in recent weeks, and we cannot keep our eyes off of that. And the administration is aiming for 3,000 arrests per day across all immigrant populations, not just Iranians. But these are going to be disproportionately target communities like the Bamamsa community, including Iranians. As to provide assisting those Iranians who have been held in ICE custody. So we are considering different options. So we're trying to get in touch with the families of those who have been arrested. So right now my colleagues are online trying to get in touch with them, their lawyers, and see what we can do to provide resources. We're pursuing perhaps opening a dialogue with some of the agencies to see why is this happening and if there's any reports or any conversations we can have with them. And where these Iranians are going to be detained, or are they going to be deported to a different country? As you all may remember, back a few months ago, there were a group of Iranian asylum seekers who were deported to Panama. The New York Times did a report on this, and these Iranians who were arrested today in LA. This past week, most of them are all asylum seekers, and they are fleeing persecution from the government in Iran. They are fleeing religious persecution, political persecution, and the Trump administration is arresting people who are trying to flee persecution from the government, and the Trump administration wants to support a new freed regime in Iran while they're trying to detain. It's a really weird, convoluted logic that is happening. That why would you detain and deport Iranian asylum seekers who are trying to flee persecution? But then also doing all these things, bombing the country and so forth. It's a twisted logic. I would say it is unclear where these people will go from LA. We're trying to find more information. It's still very fresh. I don't have more answers for you, but we're working really hard to find out more. Yeah, and it's not just in LA, but also New Orleans. Like there was a woman in New Orleans who was a restaurant owner for decades, and she was just arrested by ICE. It's really crazy.
Thank you so much for that. Isaac, did you want to say a couple of things?
You just really want to appreciate both Myriam and Adam for your participation, everything that you have shared, and remind everybody who's joined in that in just 22 hours, the US Senate is scheduled to vote on US participation in the war with Iran, and particularly on the Senator Kane's War Powers Resolution, which says that US strikes on Iran, US participation in this war is unconstitutional, has not been authorized by Congress. This is a really important vote, and there are a lot of Senate votes that are up for grabs. It's not clear how they will vote, both Democrats and Republicans. So we're encouraging folks to take some action tonight with us, and we're going to be sending emails to our senators and representatives, because the House of Representatives will be voting on this. The last I heard, the earliest they would vote would be July 22nd, but we want to send notes to all of them. And it really makes a difference when they hear from their constituents. And after that, there's tomorrow, people can make those phone calls at that 1-833-STOP-WAR number, which we can repost in the chat. And just a note about Action Corps: we are a grassroots humanitarian advocacy group. We campaign for U.S. policies to save lives around the world, and we have people that we've trained in 30 states, and we invite folks to join us at actioncorps.org. So I'll pass it over to Kanisha.
All right, thanks, Isaac. I'm just gonna walk everyone through how to do that action item real quick. I'll paste the link in the chat right here. And then this is just gonna send a letter to your representatives, like Isaac was saying, to make sure that they hear your voices. Send all of Congress, both your senators and your representatives, to make sure that they hear your voices, and it'll just pressure them to support the war powers resolutions in the House and Senate. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. That link is in the chat for you real quick. Sorry, my computer is very slow with screen sharing. All right, and can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Okay, so go in. This is the screen that it should take you guys to when you open the link. So you go over here on the right side of your screen, it'll have you click start writing, and that's where you go and fill in all of your information. So you can put in your phone number. I'll put in mine real quick. And then this is going to go to my Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland. So you select your suffix, your topic. For Chris Van Hollen, it'll be foreign affairs. For my Senator Angela Also Brooks, hers is under international affairs. So just be cognizant of that. It might be either of those categories or something similar for you. And then for my representative, we'll go through, see what his is. His is also international affairs. And so you go through, this is the letter that it's going to send to your Congress members. So the subject's just support Iran war powers resolutions to stop all US war in Iran. And then when you guys go and fill it out, you can read through the text if you guys would be interested in it, but it's super easy. So once you fill out all of that information, you just hit send letter, and then it'll send it through for you guys. And over here, it shows you how many people have already sent letters and taken action on this campaign. So we have 1,196 so far. So when you guys fill out your letters, if you've already done it, I know I pasted the link in the chat a little bit earlier. If you guys can take this time to send this link to your guys' circles, and so that we can get as many people to fill this out as possible, that would be great. So now we'll give you guys a couple of minutes to fill that out yourselves.
I just like to say I'm not a guy, but secondly, I come from Vermont, and I think our representatives are already online with this, so I feel sort of dumb asking them to support something that I'm pretty sure they support. But could you research those senators or representatives that already support this?
Can I speak to this one, Kanisha?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm also from your state, Robin. We do know this. We do know from conversations that Senator Sanders and Senator Welch are supportive of this. it's still helpful for them to hear from constituents that this is something that Vermonters want. They can then say, I've heard from thousands of people in my state that they want this. It also means that the next time that there's a vote on war powers, they may be more likely, or if there's an opportunity to stick their neck out on this, they may be more willing to do that. It gives them a little bit more energy. It's kind of a vote in support of this and helps make this maybe a higher priority for them. The other thing is for Representative Ballant, you can actually, our Congresswoman in Vermont, you can actually thank her for co-sponsoring the resolution.
Okay, that's
Hmm.
good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to send their letter. Now Kanisha is we're going to take a couple of group selfies. Kanisha, if you want to talk everyone through it really quick.
Yeah, so for our selfies, if you're comfortable, if you can go ahead and turn on your camera. If not, if you would prefer to have the camera off, that's totally fine too. So we're gonna do one selfie with everyone doing a thumbs up, and then we'll do another one with thumbs down. So our plan is to go ahead and send these in follow-up letters and emails to our Congress members. So if they voted correctly on the War Powers resolutions, we'll send them the thumbs up. And if they voted incorrectly, we'll send them the thumbs down one just to express our views and get that across to them. So we'll go ahead and do the thumbs up one first. If everyone's comfortable going ahead and giving a thumbs up for us real quick. All right, got it. Now we can go ahead and do the thumbs down one. All right. Oop, we'll go ahead and do one more. I see you turn your camera on down there, Duncan. All right, do the thumbs down one more time. All right, there you go. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and pass it back to Sarah real quick to close this out.
Thank you all so much again for joining us. Tonight, like Kanisha said, we have almost 1,200 letters sent so far. So please take a moment to share with friends, family, neighbors, anyone you know, and get letters sent to your senators and representatives. It's more important than ever for us to do so. I hope you're coming away from tonight energized to take some action, and have learned a little bit more about the situation from our amazing speakers. Please have a great night. We'll also drop the link to the letter campaign as well as that hotline 1-833 Stop War for people to call tomorrow to let your senators know how you feel about the impending vote. Um, Other than that, have a great night, everyone. And please take a moment to call and sign. We plan on sending out a recording of this event sometime next week. In case anyone wants to hang around and chat for a few minutes, we will be here. But thank you so, so much. And I know both of our speakers are gone, but thank you so much to them for being here tonight.